Hello, people of the internet. It's me again, Will. So, I wanted to tell you a story about a lady from Flint, Michigan. Julia Danfield is her name. Julia Danfield was an unhappy lady. She was an unhappy mother. She was an unhappy wife. She was unhappy with her life at work. There wasn't much in Julia's life that made her happy at all. And one day, while sitting in the break room at work with her close friend Michelle, the two of them got to talking about what it would be like to just start over again. Just start over. Go back to the beginning and start over. Julia said, if I could do it all over again, I would. And her friend said, yeah, but you've got way too many things right now that would keep you from starting over. She paused for a minute, looked down at the table, then looked up at her friend Michelle and said, not if my husband was dead. I'd have the money. I could start all over again. And she said, but the problem is I don't know anybody who commits murder. Do you know of anybody? Her friend Michelle jokingly laughed and said, no, I don't know anybody who commits murder. That's a silly question to ask. She said, we're two suburban, housewives, and we don't deal with people like that. She goes, I think I know somebody who does. Have you ever thought about killing your husband? Michelle looks at her and says, no, that would be against God's wishes. I would never do something like that. So, Julia Danfield finishes up her break, goes back and finishes out her shift there at work, goes home and was sitting there thinking about it that night while looking at her husband sitting in the easy boy recliner with a beer in his hand. Like so many other nights before, every night was the same to Julia, and she hated it. She hated everything about it. All she wanted was a change. She wanted some excitement in her life. She wanted to start over. So, the next day at work, she's sitting with her friend Michelle again during their break. She says to Michelle, I think I've come to a decision. I think I'm going to change my life. I'm going to start now. After today, I'm going to start my life and I'm going to start living my life. I'm going to become the person I was always meant to be. She says, that sounds great. Thinking she's talking about maybe, losing weight, taking on exercise, maybe, a craft, maybe changing, going as far as changing jobs, something along those lines. Michelle never thought for a second that she was talking about killing her husband and making it all look like a botched robbery and therefore getting the life insurance money to start over. But that's exactly what happened. "27-year-old Julia Danfield of Flint, Michigan, is currently serving 5 to 25 years in prison for solicitation of murder of her husband. Looking to cash in on her husband's $450,000 life insurance policy, plus the $5,000 accidental death policy from their credit union, plus what she believed her mother-in-law still had as part of an insurance policy on him that she had carried for years prior to their marriage. A $325,000 policy. But what she didn't know was the mother-in-law had let that policy lapse the day they got married, and her husband took out his own life insurance policy through his work. Yeah. So the money wasn't as much as she thought it would be. But she would find that out in the end. Julia approached another lady that she used to work with, a lady she knew who had dealings on the wrong side of the tracks, if you will, from the rougher part of town. She started up a conversation with her where she knew she always hung out at a local bar. And she asked her just casually, "Do you know anyone who's in a motorcycle gang? Or somebody who has a deep, dark criminal history?" Thrown back by the question, she says to herself, "Well, why do you ask?" She goes, "Well, I'm just interested in meeting people who have had, past histories, who have turned their lives around. Or maybe they haven't yet, but, they want to." "Joe, I think I might know some people like that. I could make some calls if you want to meet them." "Yeah, would you do that?" They sat there. They enjoyed their drinks. Before Julia got up that night from the bar stool, she turns to this former coworker and says to her, "Have you ever wanted to kill your husband and start all over again? And if you did it, where would you go and what would you do?" Thinking she's asking her a hypothetical question because someone just doesn't come out and ask a question like that in an open forum, a place where everybody can hear you. But Julia just doesn't care anymore. She didn't care if anybody overheard the question. Her former coworker, thinking it's a hypothetical question, says, "I would never kill my husband. I love him too much, and I wouldn't know what to do without him. Why do you ask?" She says, "I need to find somebody. I need to find somebody who can do that for me. I need somebody who can kill my husband. He's been cheating on me, and he's been abusing me, and it has to end." She made all that up. Her husband never cheated on her. He never raised a hand to her. She just wanted that insurance money. The former coworker looks at her and says, I might be able to find somebody. I'll meet you here next week, same time, and we'll see if, what I can come up with." She agrees and says, "Yeah, thank you very much. It's the only way I'm going to survive before he kills me." Not knowing if she's serious or not at this point. She agrees, at least in part, with her there, that she's going to help her. But what Julia didn't know is this lady had no intention of finding a hitman for her. She left the bar that night and went straight to the police department and told them everything. Everything that Julia had said. The police decided, next Friday, before you go to the bar, you come here and meet us first. An hour beforehand, we're going to put a wire on you. We're going to go meet and just see if she's just talking, out of her ass. What is she? Maybe she's just stressed and she's making it all up and she really doesn't want to go through this. Her former coworker thinking, God, I hope that's what it really is. I really hope she doesn't really want to go through with something like this. Next Friday comes. She meets the police there. They put a wire on her that's hidden. Even if Julia looked for it, she couldn't have found it. Then the two of them, the undercover detective and this former coworker, went to the bar to meet with Julia. While sitting there, They started making small talk about the local sports teams, in and around the state of Michigan, the Detroit Lions and the Tigers, and a couple of other, the things about the weather, how life was going, with a political, affiliation, who's in office, who isn't in office. And then Julia turns to the undercover detective and says, "Are you the man for the job?" And he says, "I might be. What's the job?" She says, "I'm looking for someone who can kill my husband. But I want somebody who can do it when, where, and how I want it done." He pauses for a moment, then looks up at Julia and says, "I can do that. When do you want it done?" She says, "I need it done July 19th. I need it done on that day. I've already come up with an alibi where plenty of people will see me, so no one will ever come back looking for me. I want it to look like a robbery, and I want him to die in the shower by gunfire. I want someone to come in and shoot and kill him in the shower." She said, he looks at her and goes, "Yeah. Well, I guess I can do it. Let's talk about how much it's going to cost." Julia says, "I hope it's not going to be that expensive because I only have so much money before I get the insurance money." But he asks, "How much is the insurance money?" She says, "Well, I think it's just going to be right around $1 million when it's all done." He says, He goes, "Well, I'll do it for $10,000, but I need all the money up front. Every bit of it. I don't take checks and I don't take payments. Cash only." Julia says, "I can't do $10,000. Would you do it for $5,000 up front? And then $5,000 once I get the insurance money?" The man sitting across the table from her starts to tap his hands on the table. And then looks up at Julia and says, "Yes, I can do it for $5,000 up front, but I want $10,000 on the back end since you're getting close to $1 million." Julia says, "That sounds good. Let's do it. Again, it must be done July 19th. He looks at her and says, "Why July 19th? Why that particular day?" She said, "That's the day of the anniversary when this man came into my life. The date of our first date. The day we went out for the very first time. I want it done then. But additionally, I want him shot 8 times. Why 8? It only takes 1 bullet to kill a man. I want 8 bullets," she says to him angrily, "because I want one in him for every year of marriage that he put me through hell." All right? 8 times. 8 bullets it is. And you want him killed where? She says, "It has to be in the shower of our home. Downstairs. I'll leave the door unlocked when I leave. He'll never even bother to check the door." "Where will you be?" She goes, "I'm leaving that day directly for the airport. I'll have plenty of witnesses of people who will see me get on a flight, and I'll be flying to New York City." Okay. But downstairs in the shower. "Well, where's it at?" "The bathroom, exactly." She goes, "Here," grabbing a cocktail napkin from the table and getting out a pen. She draws him a map of the downstairs of the home. It says, "This is the bathroom. It must be in the shower because I don't want a huge cleanup. I don't want a mess. I don't need this man leaving me another mess from his death. All right. Downstairs. Shower. Shoot him 8 times. I got it. July 19th. I got it. He picks up the napkin and walks out. Walks out of the place and then walks back in and says, I need the money no later than the 10th of July. Oh, no problem, Julia speaks up. I can get you the money tomorrow. I'll just take it out of his retirement account at the bank. He has a cash deposit account there. I can go and take the money out right there. How about we meet tomorrow and I'll give you the cash? That way you know I'm serious about this. I want this done. All right, tomorrow, 6 o'clock, meet me here. And we'll get this done. Julia, thinking that she has completed every part of what she needs to get done to have this man taken out of her life. She's over enthused, bubbling with emotions, but happy that she's going to be able to start her own new life with all of this cash. Oh, Julia. Oh, Julia, you're not the brightest candle on the opera. She goes to the bank. She takes out the $5,000 in cash. Then waits around till 4:30, goes to the bar to meet the man. He comes in, she hands him an envelope with the $5,000 in cash in it. And he leaves. Thinking that she is, the deed is done, she goes home and books and prepays for her airline ticket. And she'll pick it up there at the airport. She's got a week to go. So what do I do? She says, what do I do? Well, I'm going to need to pack for my trip without my husband knowing that I've packed for the trip, because he's going to want to know, where am I going? Slowly, she takes items out to the car, to the trunk of her car, and puts them into a suitcase that she has already bought. Well, all right, packing's done. Now what? Well, I need to take care of my job. She goes to work like she normally would, the next day, and quits her job. Tells them that, if there's a medical emergency in the family and she won't be back anytime soon. But it's best that, somebody, for her work, they hire somebody else. She doesn't want medical leave. She just quits. They say their goodbyes. Her friend Michelle says her goodbyes, thinking that she's starting a whole new life, that she's going to do, the things that are beneficial for her. Yoga, maybe take up dance classes that she had always talked about. Moving on forward with her life, maybe going back to school, doing something. Little did she know, she was serious about wanting her husband dead. July 18th comes. The day before the murder is planned to happen. She's packed. She's quit her job. Her husband is no wiser to what's going on. She grabs her little girl, loads her into the car, and takes her to her sister's house, and says that her and her husband, Clay, have gotten into a fight, and they are going to talk it out for the night. And can the little girl stay the night, possibly the weekend, with her? Her sister agrees and says, give me a call, keep me abreast of what's going on. I need to keep up to date on this. She leaves, goes home, tells her husband that their little girl is staying the night at her sister's house for a slumber party with other kids, but she's the only kid there. Then She goes to bed at the end of the night like she always has, and wakes up the next morning and pretends that she's going to work. He gets ready and is getting ready for work, and he usually leaves about an hour and a half after her. She leaves, and then there's a knock at the door after she leaves, thinking maybe she left her keys, in the house someplace, or she needed to get in somewhere, and the car's running in the driveway. He goes to answer the door, and there stands 5 uniformed police officers and the detective. And they say, "Clay, we need to talk to you." Okay. Clay says, they ask if they can come inside and talk to him. They come inside, and they break the bad news to Clay. "Clay, your wife has paid for and hired a hitman to kill you. But what she doesn't know is the hitman is actually an undercover detective." And they play him the audio tapes, the videotape of the conversation, the meeting, her taking the money out of the bank, going to the bank, the whole 9 yards of it all. Show him everything. Shocked, at that she wants him dead. And the detective looks at him and goes, was there ever any turmoil in your life, disagreements, anything recently that's been going on? He's like, no. And as a matter of fact, this Friday is the anniversary of our first date. Knowing even that small of a detail of their lives. They said, "Well, we want to stage the event to make it look like you were murdered in the shower, so we can send her proof that it was done. Because right now she's on the way to the airport to fly to New York City." Okay. All right, he agrees. They stage the photos, and the phone number that Julia had used to contact the hitman in the past sent Julia a picture that looks like Clay had been shot and killed in the shower, with the shower curtain wrapped around part of his body on the floor, with a pile of fake blood in the tub and all over the floor. Julia received the message while she's on the plane. Happy. It's all over with now. Now I can land in New York and go to the office of New York Mutual, the insurance aid company who holds the life insurance policy for her husband. Wait a couple of days, act like I'm grieving, and then ask for the policy to be cashed out. Thinking it would be that simple. He's dead, collect the check, and start a new life. She had no desire to ever go back home to get her daughter. Her daughter was part of yesterday. Tomorrow is a new day. The poor little girl, her daddy is supposedly dead. And mommy isn't coming back for you ever. They wait until the next day. The police department did. Then they called Julia and they asked her to please come home. And she says, "Well, I have business I need to take care of here." And they said, "Well, we'd be more than happy to get you a bereavement ticket to fly back to New York once this is all over with." And she says, "Yeah, well, okay, I'll do that." She flies back to Flint, Michigan, goes to the police department and says, I'm back. They said, "We don't know how to tell you this, but we believe that it was a robbery, gone wrong, and that the person who killed your husband may have stolen some items from your home, and we need to go there with you to investigate to see what might have been stolen, because we don't know what is gone from the home." She agrees. She gets in her car, and the police follow her back to the house. They get back to the house, and she's going around and she's looking. She goes, Oh, yeah, there was a bunch of really expensive jewelry that was in this jewelry box that used to sit here at the box, and everything's gone. Thinking on the spot, maybe I can get an insurance claim out of this robbery as well. Even more money to start over again. Yeah, now these were really expensive diamond earrings that were in this box and a really expensive diamond ring. Oh, okay. Noting it down on paper that it was a robbery, that there are, expensive jewels that are missing from the home. What else is missing? Well, there's some artwork in the closet downstairs. I don't know if let's go see if that's there. Going downstairs, opens the closet. There is no artwork in the closet. Yep, all the artwork is gone. One of them we never had it really appraised, but we think it might have been a Van Gogh. Those are, probably really expensive, she tells the officer. Okay. And as he's getting, well, I think I've got everything here. He's writing down his notes, and he's walking towards the door, and Julia's right behind him. He opens the door to go step outside, and her husband is waiting right there. All he says to her, all he says to Julia is, I loved you. I loved you with all my heart for 8 years. And you wanted me dead. I can't believe it. And he turned and walked away. The officer then reached over, grabbed Julia's wrist, and put the cuffs on her. Because of the willingness to not file any additional charges, the police, the DA, they made a plea agreement with her. You plead guilty to solicitation of murder. We'll drop all of the insurance fraud against you because she never made contact with any of the insurance companies. We'll drop all those. In exchange, you will be sentenced between 5 and 20 years in the state penitentiary. Julia agreed through her legal counsel that this would be the best method to do. Her daughter, well, being raised by dad now, and only dad. The court awarded him physical custody of their little girl. And then Julia decided that she never wanted to see either of them again. And she voluntarily gave up her parental rights in the state of Michigan. So he changed their name and have since moved out of the state of Michigan. Julia, sentenced to 5 to 20, 6 months after she arrived at the state penitentiary, was involved in a fight with another inmate. Additional charges were filed, and Julia received an additional 4 years in prison on top of the 5. So now she must do 9 years. 9 years before she's eligible for parole. And only then if she completes all of their requirements. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today to learn a little bit about Julia Danfield from Flint, Michigan. If you enjoyed this video today, please give it a thumbs up and like and share. Leave me a comment. Tell me, would you ever think about killing your husband, your wife, if there was a lot of money involved?
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign. a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?